I swear I won't make fun of the size of their maces this time. Hey guys, Dov here, and today we've got a replay from Ice Power featuring the Foul Dark Elves and Dread Knights. Yeah, 3 Dread Knights, which is quite a deep spend on some elite melee cavalry. Let's talk more about them in just a second. The rest of the build, he's got 2 Manticores, Morathi, 2 K-Knight Assassins, bunch of Fear Spears, Corsairs. I don't think there's any sad swords here, actually. Maybe 1 or 2. But up against Energized Greenskins. Energized's been appearing quite a bit on the channel, actually, lately. Got Skarsnik, River Troll Hag, couple of Stone Trolls, Orc Boar Boys, Boar Boy Biggins even. 1 Boar Boy, 1 Boar Boy Biggin. Orc Boys up front. Yeah. Spider Rider Archers. It's a Greenskins build. Bob. Well, I guess not Bob, but at least the Blob. Anyway, we've got Dread Knights here. Yeah, Dread Knights are an interesting one. Melee cavalry, this high-tier melee cavalry is a kind of an interesting unit class to me, and it's one that I need more experience using myself. I have used somewhat in the past, but it's just not one like the Shock Cavalry has a little bit more of an obvious direct role, right? Like you charge, does a bunch of damage, you pull back, rinse and repeat, cycle in and out, right? The Melee Cavalry is a little bit interesting because it doesn't have as good of charge bonus, but it has much better sustained melee stats. Like the regular Dread Knights here, let's see, I believe they have 1 Chevron, 2 Chevron to start. So pretty good stats, both above 40 melee attack and defense. Regiment around obviously 49, 52 in terms of attack and defense. So they can stand and sustain combat for a lot better than a lot of other melee cavalry, or shock cavalry rather. We'll compare them to some other melee cav like, you know, Power Sword Chaos Knights and Grail Guardians and so on after the game. So be sure to stick around for that. But right now, Manticore's diving in on Skarsnik. The Troll Hags are going to respond here, as do the Stone Trolls, trying to use their mass to block up the Manticore. But what that allows is these Dread Knights to get a pretty decent charge in here without getting countercharged by the Stone Trolls, and they get solid contact on these Black Orcs right here. Pretty nicely done. They are going to cycle out pretty quickly. Some Fanatics being unleashed there will do some nice HP damage, and that is one of the biggest downsides. One of the reasons you don't see Dread Knights super often is because their HP is so low. Despite that 120 armor and good melee defense, they tend to take damage very, very quickly. But we still got some Dread Spears over here on the side doing just that. Same thing with these Corsairs here, but the Dark Elves certainly have a lot of staying power in this build, more than it would appear, given that Morathi's kind of hero blob will be quite strong. The Manticores have taken quite a bit of damage, but look at this, Skarsnik just getting assassinated by the K-Knight Assassins in melee, using their trophy, or their, what is it? Yeah, Assassin's Trophy, whatever it is. A debuff, I'm sure, already worn off, but K-Knight Assassins are 70 melee attack baseline with just not the most weapon strength, but with poison and just that super high attack means they'll make consistent contact on Skarsnik. He gets routed there. Likewise, the Manticore is also being routed, but these Dread Knights have so far got some pretty good damage in on some of those different power units. Taking some Overwatch fire here. This one in particular, the Regiment of Renown, still relatively healthy after 3.5 minutes of slugging. So a nice Soul Stealer going to be unleashed here. Will definitely do some solid damage to the Black Orcs. Stone Trolls' magic resistance helps them a bit against that, but they will still take some decent damage as well. You can see how the Dread Knights were able to actually break one of these units of Stone Trolls. That is super, super critical to get rid of those regenerating Troll units. And the heavy AP and kind of melee stats of the Dread Knights was able to help them pull off the win. The other thing, too, that's kind of something that's hard to quantify is leadership. This Dread Knight's getting a dreadful rear charge here, absolutely smashing and actually breaking a lot of these units. They do cause fear, so there's that going for them as well. But now getting countercharged by the Stone Trolls, they are going to have to pull away. But anyway, totally lost my train of thought where I was going with that from before. The Dread Knights, yeah, the low model count, low HP definitely ends up being an issue. So they're a little bit more glass cannon than what you would expect. Especially on a faction with no healing. Like, if these guys were on a faction that had access to Lore of Life, you'd see them a lot more often, because suddenly those sustained melee stats, the low HP doesn't matter so much, and you can really rely on those stats more, per se. But given the fact that Morathi has that strong kind of debuff power in her blob, even just by herself, and also obviously with other heroes, then she can kind of boost their stats even more in a given pocket. And the leadership, that's right, that was what I was talking about. It's hard to put, you know, a real, like, I don't know, it's hard to quantify, I guess. It's hard to really put into numbers, like, how good leadership is, because here you can see, like, the Knights of the Ebon Claw in particular have taken a lot of damage. A lot of units would just be routing to the hills by now, like the Greenskins, for example. Most of their units that low of HP left, you know, given the situation, all the damage they've taken, would have been routed off long ago, but the Elves' leadership does help them out quite a bit in terms of staying in the fight, and only a handful of unit models are really needed to make a difference here. Let's see how they do. A lot of this is going to come down to Morathi kind of carrying the day here. You can see the balance power, despite the fact the Greenskins have a lot more numbers left, not really favoring them. That is largely due to the fact that Morathi's still so healthy, but Ice Power's doing a nice job kind of ping-ponging these Dread Knights back and forth, trying to keep them from getting completely swarmed by the Greenskins' numbers. They're able to, again, get a break here on these Orc Borbiggins, who did manage to get some good damage done of their own. But now kind of pulling away here, going after these Stone Trolls. Again, utilizing that mobility as much as possible. Going after the Mangy Marauders too, even. But this charge here on the Stone Trolls, they may end up losing this fight if the Stone Trolls turn around. But considering they've got the Manticore on their side, the Terror kicks in, and the Trolls are able to be routed there. Now, they may end up coming back and getting a nasty little side or rear charge here. But eventually the Knights of the Ebon Claw will just get straight up outnumbered and dragged down. And, yep, looks like the Trolls do come back at a very opportune moment, able to countercharge in here, probably break the Manticore as well. And, yeah, Dread Knights suffering slightly, but like I said, that leadership, you can see, despite there's only 13 of them, there's less than 500 HP left on the unit, and they're still fighting now just barely as they go down below like 300 HP. Do they want to rout? So pretty impressive stuff. Waaagh being popped for the Greenskins as they run in. Morathi's going to have to be careful. She's in command, but at the same time, she gets fully surrounded and just circle beaten by the higher weapon strength of these boys and so on. It will be pretty decent. The fact that the Knight Assassins are able to continue to provide poison both at range and in melee, just keep shooting, keep slashing, keep poisoning everything, will be quite decisive. But this is going to go on for some time, so we'll fast forward a bit here. Dread Knights will regroup a couple times, kind of come in here and just get swarmed by Spider Riders, unfortunately. They do actually hold out for a surprisingly long time, given the fact that they are outnumbered like 10 to 1 right there. I think there was like 3 or 4 Dread Knights versus 30 Spider Riders. But yeah, the low HP is definitely an issue, and that's one of the reasons why you don't see them super often. But I do think, especially the Knights of the Ebon Claw, you can use them probably more than people have been using them. Yeah, the double Knight Assassin Morathi Blob is obviously very strong. The Master Morathi Blob is also very strong. The Witch Morathi Death Blob is also very strong. And any of those are going to synergize well with the Dread Knights because they're more of a kind of sustained combat unit. It's just tricky. I really would like for CA to buff their HP a little bit. Not too much, but just a tiny bit, given that the Dark Elves don't have any healing. We'll, again, compare them to some other units after this is all said and done, but Morathi's just gotta tank out some damage. Maybe go one more Soul Stealer if she's got it. Web of Shadow's definitely been used for both the Assassins. One of the Assassins even gets routed off here, and you can see Morathi, like I said, once she gets surrounded and starts getting kind of circle beaten a little bit, she will take some damage, but it's just not going to be fast enough for the Greenskins' leadership. You know, if they have better leadership, they could probably actually grind this out. But as it is, Morathi just keeps on tanking. She's got very good stats, and with the debuffs active in an AoE, they're going to be a minimum hit chance against her. At 16 melee attack against her 40 melee defense. The minimum hit chance, I want to say, is like 8%, so they're right around that area, given the base 35% hit chance. And so just as a result, they're not able to land hits consistently enough, and there's the Soul Stealer, the back-breaking Soul Stealer we were looking for. Healing up Morathi a little bit there and doing some nice damage to all of these units, basically finishing off the 8 Picaloons and triggering army losses. So quite the slog there at the end, but the Dread Knights able to do enough over the course of the battle. It was pretty close, I have to say, probably closer than it looked at times from the balance of powers perspective, but Yeah, fun stuff. One of the Dread Knights actually did get an XP Chevron there. The other one was probably really dang close, the one that started with 2. And the Ebon Claws, I'm sure if they could get XP Chevrons, they would have got at least 1, maybe even 2, given the amount of damage that they did. Manticore is also an excellent pick. 173 kills from Morathi, too. Definitely the meta right now for Dark Elves. I'm going to be talking more about Morathi in another video, and Manticore is funny enough, but yeah, Dread Knights did their part. I mean, they did enough, and in a build, you know, with combined forces, that can be all you need at the end of the day. In dealing with the Stone Trolls in particular, you can see 1 unit of Stone Trolls, 0 kills, so Ice Power did a great job limiting them as much as possible. These guys right here, the Borbagans, didn't get that many kills, but I do think a lot of their kills came against the Dread Knights specifically. I'd have to go back and double check. But 71 kills on some boys, not too bad either. The Black Orcs, only 59. They kind of got crumped on a little bit by the Dread Knights there. But let's have a quick comparison. There's a few units I had in mind specifically for Dread Knights. We'll go with Hargoneth because, you know, classy color scheme. Bretonnia is one, obviously, right off the bat, you might think of 2 units, both Questing Knights and Grail Guardians. So if we have a comparison, Cold One Dread Knights are 1250, so they're 150 points more expensive. They kind of sit in between these two, but comparing them to Questing Knights, you see, well, number one, this is not the best comparison because Questing Knights are quote-unquote OP. And what I mean by that is they're too strong for what you pay for them, and that's often the case for units that are sort of the marquee, sort of the signature units for a faction. You'll notice that, like Chaos Warriors, for example, their armor and their stats are actually probably a little bit too good for the cost. Same thing in many ways with a lot of Dwarf Infantry units, like their armor and melee defense is comparatively much higher to other units of a similar price and role. Questing Knights are that case for Bretonnia, so pretty clearly they're just better than Cold One Knights. Not only are they 150 points cheaper, they've got way more HP, 720 more HP, less armor, and a little bit less leadership. Again, as I mentioned earlier, it's hard to put a real quantification on leadership. How's that for a word? But the Questing Knights are also faster. They have more unit models. They have 9 more unit models with the same weapon strength, so actually a higher damage output, plus 5 charge bonus as well. You have slightly lower, melee defense, and they don't cause fear, and they don't have the murderous prowess, obviously, but they are immune to psychology. Yeah, just straight up a better unit. Questing Knights are definitely the best melee cavalry in the game. There's no question about that. Grail Guardians are an interesting one. They're much tankier, but they have a lot less offensive output than the Dread Knights. Now, 1,400 more HP is insane. That's a lot more HP. That's a whole 25% more HP, basically, right? Or even more. They have 40 more armor, 5 more leadership. Somehow, even with that, same armor. So my bad. Same armor. They are faster, less attack and less weapon strength, and obviously a lot less AP too. But plus 14 melee defense, and again, even better charge bonus, which is just hilarious. And perfect vigor, blessing of the lady, all that jazz. So Grail Guardians, even though they are quite a bit more expensive for that tank role, they're much better now. Obviously, like I said, they'll do a lot less damage output, but it's kind of one of the things you pay for with the Dread Knights, right? And just for fun as well, we can add in the Regiment of Renown. Compare them. They pick up Murderous Mastery, and they do not enrage. They have plus 10 leadership and melee attack and defense, so they compare a little bit more favorably, and also cost is close to the same, but that HP difference is massive. Only 4,300 HP is pretty low at the end of the day for the Dread Knights. But one more quick comparison, kind of another high-tier melee cavalry. There's not too many of those type of units in the game, but another one is the Chaos Knights with power swords. If we compare to the base version, you can see the Chaos Knights, not only do they have better, more unit models, they have just better attack and defense in general. So they can actually fight much better. And again, 1,500 more HP, so like even more HP than we saw in the Grail Guardians in terms of difference. Same armor. Chaos Knights less leadership, but same speed. They obviously don't deal AP, but again, much better charge. and they still have a pretty good AP values at 14, with the extra 9 unit models making a pretty big difference as well. So I guess that's why people underrate them. It's pretty clear when you look at the numbers why they are the way that they are, but I think with a little bit of an HP buff and maybe a slight charge bonus buff as well, maybe give them like, I don't know if they need to be equal with questing knights in terms of HP, but give them like 500 HP even, or even 700, put them up to 5,000. That would be really, really nice. And maybe give them like a +4 charge bonus to put them up to 40 charge. I think at that point they would actually be really cost effective and a unit you would take pretty often. But as it is right now, I can say the Knights of the Ebon Claw, if you have a matchup where you have a specific role for them, you think you can take a melee fight without taking too much shock damage from monsters or missile units or other kind of high burst sources, you definitely can make them work quite well and even make them shine. So there's that to consider. Hopefully you guys enjoy. If you like this sort of content, be sure to like, subscribe, hit that bell notification button. Every time I upload a new video, you'll be notified. Thanks again. We'll see you next time.